I want to welcome you all to another episode of the Live Better, the Jason Beck Show. I'm your host, Jason Beck, and on today's show is going to be the tiny house movement part 2 with a couple quick little news topics for you. Jerry Stiller dies at age 92 of natural causes. He is the father of Ben Stiller. So, thoughts, prayers go out to the Stiller family. And I had a question for all of you. Have you ever heard of blue waves that light up and look like electricity in the water? Luminescent waves. Well, it's actually a thing. It's actually in Southern California. There have been electric blue waves at nighttime. I believe it is associated with the algae bloom and with the red tide. Now let's get into it, what you all have been waiting for. Part 2 of the tiny house movement. So today I wanted to talk about tiny house versus traditional houses. Traditional houses, this is lay down the foundation, build up the brick or wood or however they make it, and it doesn't move. You know, the tiny houses, they're so tiny they can be moved, they can be transported. If you move away, you can have take the house with you as well too. Some of these you can pull with a truck. So it's kind of cool. It's mobile, you know. But you're probably thinking, well, wait a minute. They make mobile homes. How's that any different? Well, guess what? We'll get into that. We're going to have a part 3. We're going to talk about tiny houses versus like mobile homes. So, what is the price range when you think of tiny houses? Well, the price can actually range from $5,000 all the way to $100,000. Now, there are tiny homes that you can think. We automatically think of like the house on the wheels, and that is a tiny home. That is correct. But there are tiny homes that you can make that are not meant to move, that are just stationary. You know, they also make tiny homes from those storages also too. You know, those metal storages that you get from you get from China. So there's lots of different ways where they can make a tiny house, movable or not movable. So it's kind of cool. I mean, you think about it. That concept, how it all started, that one guy that just started the movement. And then people started catching on because in a lot of different places, your mortgages are skyrocket. So, second option, still having a home and not paying as much, is a tiny house living. Now, you still have to go through other hoops and stuff, but we'll get into that last. Now, let's take a look at the traditional home. Traditional houses, they can range anywhere from $50,000 and up, which is true. I've looked. You can buy a house for $50,000, $70,000, $80,000, or all the way up. So these traditional homes are not meant to be moved. Once they're built on the land, they're there for good until you demolish them or get rid of them. They tend to, as far as like, you know, you're going to pay more for them. You're going to pay more for your utilities as well too. And we'll get a little more in depth into that at the end. So let's get into the benefits versus the cons. So let's look at the benefits of tiny house living. Not as much. Now, you could spend a fair amount and you could get a tiny house for $100,000, but the point of it is living small, not living large. And that means the same thing with your finances. You know, you want to be able to walk away with not spending as much because honestly, you have to think about if you buy the land and then you have the zoning laws for the houses as well too, and the rules and stuff. You know, and then yes, there are some areas that are tiny house communities where you can rent out lots and stuff. So I think we'll slowly see the laws change that are more flexible, and they're like, okay, you can have a regular property instead of putting a mobile home on it. You can put a tiny house on there. You know, so I think the times are changing to where you'll start to see more more of that. Other benefits of a tiny house living is it's mobile. If you have one that's mobile on wheels, if you move and selling your land at the same time, buy other land, plop your house, of course, you know, so that you have that option as well too. More energy efficient if it is built with the right insulation. Then you would pay less for electric and water and all the utilities that are wrapped into it. So essentially, you should be saving a lot more every month. Another benefit is you're living simple, so it makes you reduce all your clutter. So you get rid of all that stuff, that excess stuff that you've been holding on to your whole life that you don't necessarily need. Because let me tell you, I've seen a lot of people hold on to stuff, even myself through the times, and being a hoarder. So it helps you adapt from being a hoarder to not being a hoarder. Now, benefits of a traditional home, well, property value can always go up. You do have more room, more space. So you can basically, if you one day you want to rent out your home, you can rent out your home. So there's benefits to having a home, but what are the cons for both? I mean, the cons for a traditional home, you're going to pay a lot more. You're going to pay a lot more in utilities. You are probably going to be told what you can and cannot do to your property, especially if you live in an HOA. There's extra fees. Property tax is going to be higher. So there's going to be a lot of it goes into that's going to be a lot higher that you're going to have to pay for. Cons of having a tiny house: less space. You have to live in certain places that allow tiny homes. Either if you're owning the lot or you're renting the lot. So you have that. And then you got to make sure you have the necessary hookups. Either city hookups or, if you're living somewhere out of the city, you have to have the septic tank. So you have to have a lot of that stuff, that you need. So that being said, that kind of should give you somewhat of an idea of some of the benefits, some of the cons. Love to hear from y'all. What do you think? Please leave any comments, messages, or definitely appreciate it as well for every episode. And as always, thank you for listening to the Jason Beck Show. I'm your host, Jason Beck. And please like, share, and subscribe. And on the next episode, we'll be getting into Planet X and talking about Mirabu. And then after that, I got an awesome series for you, all of you. We'll be talking about virtual reality and technology of the future. So I will catch you all next time on the Live Better, the Jason Beck Show. I said, please share, like, and subscribe.